If you ever hear 3 knocks at your door after midnight, don't open it, because in one village in the Philippines, people who did were never seen again. The Midnight Visitor of San Isidro. I want to start by saying I didn't grow up believing in this stuff. I was raised in the States, Filipino by heritage, but third generation. My grandparents came over in the 60s. My parents were born here, and by the time I came around, most of the old country stuff had sort of faded out. We celebrated the holidays, we ate the food, we kept the language going, barely, but the folklore, the superstitions, all of that, that was gone. That was for people who still lived over there. So when my grandmother used to tell me about the Kumakatok, I just kind of nod and move on. The Kumakatok. 3 hooded figures who knock on your door in the middle of the night. Always 3 knocks. She said if you hear it, you don't open the door. You don't even go near it. You wait until morning and then you pray, because a visit from them means someone in your family is going to die. I thought it was a bedtime story, something the old folks used to tell kids to keep them from wandering at night. I don't think that anymore. This was about 4 years ago. I was visiting my grandmother's village for the first time, San Isidro. It's a small coastal barangay in the Visayas. That's the central island region of the Philippines, the kind of place that doesn't show up on tourist maps. A handful of streets, maybe 200 families, a little concrete church on a hill, and the ocean on 3 sides. My grandmother had gone back to live there after my grandfather passed. She said she wanted to die where she was born. I flew out to spend 2 weeks with her, just the 2 of us. The house was old, really old. Built sometime in the early 1900s, thick stone walls, wooden shutters on every window, no air conditioning. At night, you could hear the ocean from every room. It was one of those places that felt like time had stopped somewhere around 1960 and just never caught back up. My first few nights there were fine, hot but fine. I slept with a fan pointed directly at my face and got used to the sounds of the village at night. Roosters, distant dogs, the tide. It was on my 5th night that everything changed. I'd gone to bed early that night because the heat had wiped me out, maybe 10:30. My grandmother was already asleep down the hall. The house was completely quiet. I woke up and I wasn't sure why at first. That groggy, half-awake confusion where you open your eyes and you're not sure if it's been 2 hours or 6. I looked at my phone, 12:18 a.m., and then I heard it, 3 knocks. Not loud. That's the thing I keep coming back to. They weren't aggressive or urgent. They were slow and deliberate, with a pause between each one, like whoever was out there was being careful, patient. My first thought was that it was my grandmother. Maybe she'd gotten up for water and was checking on me. I called out quietly in the dark, asked if she was okay, nothing. The hallway was silent. I got up and walked to the door of my room, cracked it open. The hallway was dark and empty. Her door at the end of the hall was still closed. The knocks had come from the front of the house. I stood in the hallway for probably a full minute, just listening, nothing. The ocean, the fan, my own heartbeat. I told myself it was a neighbor or an animal or the old wood of the house settling. I went back to bed. Took me a while, but I got back to sleep. At around 2 a.m., my grandmother woke me up. She was standing in my doorway holding a small candle, and even in the low light I could see something was off about her expression. She wasn't panicked. It was worse than that. She looked resigned, like someone who'd just seen something they'd always known was coming. She told me in Cebuano that she'd heard the knocking too. She said she'd gone to the front window and looked out toward the door. She saw a woman standing on the porch. She described her as tall and completely still, wearing a long white dress or covering that went all the way to the ground, and her face, she couldn't really make it out. Not because it was dark, but because the woman's head was slightly turned, like she was looking off to the side. My grandmother said she watched her for a full minute. The woman didn't move, didn't knock again. She just stood there. Then, without walking, without any motion my grandmother could see, she was simply gone. I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, I asked around, carefully because I didn't want to alarm anyone or come across like some American tourist poking around for a ghost story. But the family next door, a woman around my grandmother's age named Lita, she knew exactly what I was talking about before I'd even finished my sentence. She called the figure Riva. Now, I want to be clear, that's not a traditional folkloric name I'd ever heard. This was specific to San Isidro. Lita said the older residents had called her that for as long as anyone could remember. A woman named Riva who had lived in the village sometime in the late 1800s, a fisherwoman, known in the community, respected. She had fallen in love with a sailor who came through the village one season, and when he sailed back out, he promised to return. He never did. No word, no wreckage, nothing. He was just gone the way the ocean sometimes takes people. Gone and doesn't give you an explanation. Lita said Riva spent years waiting for him. Every night she would walk the village, knocking on doors, asking the neighbors if they'd heard anything, if any passing boats had brought word. She never stopped believing he'd come back. She died still waiting. And they say she never left. The belief in San Isidro, and I'm not saying I believe this, I'm just telling you what they told me, is that Riva still walks the village some nights, still knocking on doors, still asking the same question. Not to hurt anyone, not out of anger, just because she doesn't know how to stop looking. Lita said the old people had a rule. If you hear 3 knocks after midnight, you wait. You don't open the door, you don't answer, you let her pass. Because here's the part that stuck with me. If you open the door and she sees you, she'll ask if you've seen him. She'll describe the sailor who left her, and if you so much as hesitate, if you pause, if you look like you're thinking, she takes that as a yes. She takes it as a sign that you know something, and she won't leave. I only had about a week left in San Isidro after that night, and I didn't hear the knocking again. Things went back to normal, as much as they could. My grandmother and I didn't talk about it much. She seemed to have processed it in a way I hadn't yet. For her, it was just a part of living there, something that happens sometimes, the way the tide comes in. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. On my last night there, I was sitting on the porch alone around sunset. My grandmother came out and sat with me, and we watched the water for a while. After a bit, she said something I haven't been able to stop thinking about. She said she'd seen Riva before. Once, a long time ago, the year my grandfather got sick. She hadn't opened the door that time either. She said she looked through the slats in the shutter and watched the woman standing on the porch, and she noticed something she'd never heard anyone else mention. Riva wasn't knocking on the door. She was knocking on the wall next to it, like she didn't know quite where the door was anymore. Like she'd been doing this so long, in so many places, for so many years, that she'd lost track of what she was even looking for. And that somehow was the thing that scared me most. Not the idea of a ghost. Not the idea of something standing on the porch in the dark. The idea of something that's been searching for so long it doesn't even remember what it's searching for anymore. Just the motion, just the habit, just the knocking. My grandmother passed 8 months after I got home, peacefully in the house the way she wanted. I think about San Isidro a lot. I think about that night and the sound of those 3 knocks and what my grandmother's face looked like when she came to wake me up. I still don't know what I believe, but I know that whenever I hear a knock at night, even here, even at home, an ocean away from that village, I don't answer it right away. I wait, just like she taught me.